G'day, it's Mathematical KM here. First 60-minute and 30-second game for a couple of weeks, and gee, I'm not liking the 15-minute stuff. Okay, today we had a double hippo, as you would have seen by the thumbnail. And I'm weighing in at 1465 or 64, and my opponent with the black pieces, Roy, is 1575, so a little over 100 uphill. Let's see how we go. I think there's some valuable little lessons learnt in this game. Before we go into it, I had the white pieces and pinch of salt. The old chess.com telling me I'm a 2000 and that Roy was 2400. But I guess it is nice that I got 93 in the opening to his 87, so it's not bad, and 74 to 88 outplayed a little in the middle game, but we'll see how that came about. Now I think this is a bit better to have on that, and let's take a look. So actually, for all these hippos, those of you following Mathematical KM, remember their initials, not a title, will have not seen a bit of a copycat. Gave me something to think about. So let's just see how this... He's followed me exactly so far. And one of the little bits of advice from Ruddell, the chess giant, has been, when you've got opposing bishops, that it's a good idea to protect your bishop that's facing in part of the face-off. So I've invested a move in rook to g1 there. Roy's chosen not to, and he's developed a knight. I've played the a pawn to take b4 away from that knight. He's taken some space in the middle now that we're not just mirroring each other anymore. I've advanced my g-pawn to allow me to fianchetto. Yeah, I mean, he's the higher rated player here, but this knight on g6 is, I guess it can go e5 if he particularly wanted it, but the two forward squares are nicely looked after by my g-pawn. I decided to finish getting my knights in the middle. He's now not so much mirroring the hippo as doing a more traditional, trying to claim the centre squares. The rating's given 0.6 to white at the moment, which is interesting. I've gone the fianchetto. The one thing to remember is that I have invested the extra move in protecting that bishop, and that's something that we discussed after the game in a bit that's coming up, where he hasn't spent the move shifting his rook or anything else to protect that bishop. So now he's moved his f-pawn to support the e-pawn. This is pretty much the breather moment, as Solomon Goodell would have, where you're taking a look at how to move forward from your basic hippo setup, depending on what you see in front of you. Now this pawn is protected by a pawn and a knight and another knight. Three protectors, one of which is the best type of protector, being a pawn. So clearly don't want to touch that e-pawn with a bar of soap, not really. Now the d-pawn, at the moment, the only protector is the queen. And we've got a bishop on it. There's not much in it, but the computer's recommending knight c3, which gives me that knight 2 to 1 on that pawn. And that's at plus 0.96. Very close at 0.88. We've got c4, which is going to be giving me a pawn and the bishop, two pieces to the one, and the one's not going to come in a hurry, being the queen. So as much as training for anything else, getting the right move after the breather moment, well, that's step one, really. And bang, the second best one. And I did think about the knight coming across, but went with second best. And, pretty happy with that. He's backed his knight off. I don't know why it's given so questionable, because now he's got a knight, a bishop, and a queen. 3 pieces defending. He's gone from 1 to 3. This is coming into move 12. Queen c2 would be giving myself another protector on my pawn. It's already got 2 pawns and a knight. But it might open up on my d pawn if that comes out of the way. And currently my d pawn would be hanging. So the queen to c2 is the top choice. That's not bad. But the next lesson is right now. And, I have learnt to check my diagonals every move playing this hippo. But another thing that happens reasonably often, and there's no guarantee it would have caught Roy out, but I just want to point out the second best move. And we're up to plus 1.62, and nothing's been removed from the board. So we're getting the good start. We just need to get a bit more follow through in the middle game here. And queen c2, for the reasons given, it's protecting the d pawn, which will become hanging, and it's another piece threatening to break through on the queen side of the board. That's great. But I'm not guaranteeing that I would notice or play that each and every time. It's certainly it's a good move, but I don't think it's a strategic tic-tac lesson. But h4 very much is. As well as checking your diagonals if you're playing the old hippo, more than once, even in the games I've shown you guys in my YouTube, we've caught a knight out. No, 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 and no. That may be why that was so questionable back there. This knight's got nowhere to go. And the second best move, h4, Roy may or may not notice. You can't move the bishop to give the knight a square. Moving the rook across is just almost silly, and also why would you want your knight back there? The only reasonable sort of a reaction would be either this pawn forward or moving this knight back where it came from, which is, why it's kind of questionable. And if that knight comes back where it came from, all of a sudden the pawn that we're attacking does only have the one defender and plans can move forward. What's he going to do? Move it back there? So I can really truly see that keeping an eye out for trapped knights and taking advantage of them. So queen c2 might have been the better move, but the h4 is much like watching your diagonals for gifted on-pre pawns, is watching for trapped knights and harassing them with your a pawn or h pawn. Okay, having the woulda, coulda, shoulda, next week I'll ask Roy, I may even show him this if he watches the video. It would be nice to, what move would you have played after h4 at that point in time? Now, we're still up 1.6 at this point, so we're coming out of the opening nicely. Let's see where we go right or wrong. In fact, I kind of already know, but we'll see what happened. What did we play? So I didn't play h4. It's a couple of moves to do it. It's got the big question mark on it. I invested time and energy protecting my fianchettoed bishop. The last thing I want is for the two bishops just to be removed from the board and to have wasted the rook move back there. Now it's dropped from 1.6 to 1.1 already. He takes, and move 13, again, it's still up by more than a pawn, 1.1. Let's look at the suggestions. We've invested time and energy in this bishop. We don't want to just get rid of... If we swap the bishops off in the middle of the board and resulting in either queen or a knight, we're going to develop a black piece to the middle and swap off a piece that we wasted tempo protecting. The last thing in the world we want to do is take it off. So the only way to keep our over a point advantage is bishop to h3, which is getting it on a nice diagonal and not swapping them off. He can't follow within here because then it's not swapping off, it's just taking. So lots of good reasons for h3. Next best, e4. Again, we've invested in this bishop. We don't want to have him just come off for no reason. If anything, one day it would be nice if we take a rook with that bishop. So e4 would be good and along those lines, and it's still 0.94. And dropping down to 0.7, so not really very good, is knight f3. But the one thing that you can see about knight f3, all three of the best moves, even dropping down to 0.7, they are all trying to avoid the bishop swap. So I've come out, we've seen where to attack, we've started the attack, and I was about 10 minutes up on the clock here, and really I should have spent some more time thinking. And thinking along the lines of, I've invested time and effort in my bishop, he hasn't, and this lets black develop a piece in the middle, and we've lost the piece that we invested the time and effort in. So I think he would have been better off developing a queen there. But as it is, it's dropped from 1.6 down to 0.9, so that was a little bit silly, some of what I did in there. But still there are no blunders or mistakes in the whole game, I don't think. We'll take a look at what chess.com said at the start. We'll have a look at again at the end. Okay, so coming into move 15, I can see a discovered attack is, not that hard to envisage on a pawn that would be hanging. So we actually could have played queen c2 on the last one. I'm going to have to play it if he moves his knight. I need to protect this pawn. Could be queen c2, played down to advantage of 0.5. He's come flying down. It would have been nice if he kept his pawn at home and I could have doubled up the queen and a rook, but no, that's not too bad of a move. And we're coming into a short little sequence where that half a pawn advantage to white is going to be a little bit foolishly given away, and then a good arm wrestle, but black holds on to that advantage till it's game winning. Let's see how we go. Before we move that rook behind the knight, that knight is trapped again for the same reasons, and h4 is again a good move because of the same reasons. Now, we instead moved a rook across behind the knight, lined up on his queen, I guess, is what I was thinking. That knight can't come in. I guess it can come here. Stopping it from coming here would be b4. That would have been a good idea. And the queen has dived in without enough support, and the pawns are really fencing my own queen in, and I'll be lucky if I don't lose my queen. I guess you could say I don't lose it. And it's at this point right now And I knew my queen was a little bit far advanced. If you were black, how would you harass the queen? You'd want to move that b pawn forward, and so you want to protect that push. Now, I've very helpfully removed all these squares my queen could have retreated to, and you'll notice it's gone to -1. So this is looking at things that I need to think a little bit more about. This one I feel a little silly that I wasn't thinking about it. Okay. Why did Sauron do what Sauron did? Sauron put his rook there to allow the pawn push, which is going to hurt my queen. My queen, I wouldn't call it a safe square. It does have that square, but it's still not good. I'm going to end up losing one of my central pawns. And the only edge that white has had for a little while, if you can call it an edge, is I've got 2 central pawns and black doesn't. And trying to be too clever by half, that move to get... I was thinking the rook to protect the pawn so I can, arrange for my queen to go here or here. I was actually thinking about queen here. If only my opponent had let me have 2 moves in a row, that wouldn't have been the worst move in the world. As it is, it's called a great move, but I really, honest to God, should have seen it coming. Now, the only move that really makes any sense is queen d5. And let's swap off queens and then I'll lose a pawn. Very difficult to protect that pawn at this point. It's basically gone. So I've decided he'll take my pawn and I'll take one of his pawns. But it does become isolated and it's under threat by the bishop. It probably wasn't the best. He brings his bishop in. Not the best. Takes. I decided to try and get my king out of the way, join my rooks together. Just for now, the knight's protecting the pawn and the other knight. And once I get my king out of the way, the rook will be connected. He's connected his rooks. I've connected mine. I've 4 pawns to, 2, 4, 6, so 2 pawns down. And I think that advantage is just a little bit uncoordinated in here, discombobulated. Finally, the h4 move, right when it's not needed, when that knight can get out. I was vaguely at the time, for what it's worth, thinking about if I can just get this knight here, that'll cover that square, and then I can do that plan. So, 3rd time and too late. The trapping the knight plan was available very early and then a little bit later in the middle game, but now it's very easily stopped. Brought the rook across. Moved him forward to stop that knight coming forward. But it does come here. Pawn forward makes more sense, but wasn't played. I said protected that pawn with the king, but the knight can still come in because the king can't take it while it's protected by the pawn. So he's activated that piece very nicely. This piece isn't doing too much back there. That was a little bit of a mistake. Now, if only, and I'm sort of half planning if I can manage to take his rook with check, swapping a pair of rooks, and then take a piece with the king. And it's still -5, but king f3 was definitely the move to make. The moment he's got 2 pieces on that knight, so life's just hard. But king across was definitely the move, because without it, I got the rook out, the knight out of trouble, but actually that knight needed to be protecting this rook because discovered attack on the rook, which is no longer protected by its buddy, couldn't afford to move that knight. Came with check. If my king had been here, I could have swapped off a pair of rooks with check and then taken the bishop. But maybe he wouldn't have played. But at this point, it's all too much. I'm going to lose I'll take the bishop and lose a rook, and and down 3 pawns to 6. It's very much all over at that point. So if we go back to the review, one player was winning, that would be me, then gave it away. Got a little bit of an advantage from me putting that queen too far forward really and getting discombobulated. We saw what I could have done, and he's just kept that advantage and given a very nice middle game demonstration. I mean, it gave me 2,000 to an 80% to 88%. 2,000 to 2,400, so I didn't play badly with no misses or blunders to either of us. And I had a couple of lessons learnt with twice I was offered the chance to go for the trap the knight plan. And the queen shouldn't have gone forward, and I could see how he was going to threaten the queen. And I basically walled my own queen in there. That one's unforgivable. And the last point was if you invest the time and effort in the bishop, fianchetto, and he doesn't, all three are the best moves there. Avoid trading the bishops for each other. Keep your bishop aimed at his rook. So, very nice game. Thank you, Roy. You did play 100 elo better than me. But you also gave me some ideas to think about, and it's also my first hippo with a hippo. And this time the black hippo knocked out the white one. So, bye everybody. See you next week.